Well, hi, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if it's your first time. Today, I've got a very interesting, I think, video for you. In fact, I'm going to start a video series on books that are really useful for contract drafting. So I'm going to do 3 videos and each one is going to talk about different books and different books for different aspects. I'm going to put links to these books in the description. And of course, if you want to skip ahead to a book, you can have a look at the description. There will be chapter markers there. So we're going to kick off this mini series with books that I think are really helpful for acquiring language for contracts, for understanding contracts, and for contract drafting. So let's go. Okay, so the first 3 books I'm going to treat together. Okay. This book, okay, the Lawyer's English Language Coursebook, which is for A2, B1. Then I have the Lawyer's English Language Coursebook, which is for B1, B2. And then Advanced Legal English, which is also a TOLES book. So we're going to look at these 3 kind of together. These 3 books are the main books that you want to use if you're preparing for the TOLES exams. That's the Test of Legal English Skills exams. The first 2 books, the Lawyer's English Language Course books, okay, those are primarily for Foundation and Higher, respectively. And then the advanced book here is for preparing for the TOLES Advanced. However, even if you're not studying for the TOLES exams, they're still really useful books to use to acquire legal English vocabulary. They cover quite a lot of different practice areas like employment, banking, corporate law, as well as contracts, okay? However, they are quite valid books for studying contracts and contract language because they do contain more than one unit or chapter on contract drafting. So I'm going to deal firstly with the first 2 books, the Lawyer's English Language Course books, and then we'll deal with the advanced one afterwards. So I'm going to video on my phone and show you inside the books so that you get to see. Okay, so here we've got the Lawyer's English Language Coursebook A2B1. It's published by Catherine Mason from Global Legal English Limited. The publication date is 2021. So you can see here in the table of contents that there are many different chapters or units. The ones on contract drafting are Unit 3, the language of contract law. Then we also have Unit 6, understanding contracts. That's understanding contracts 1. And then you also have understanding contracts 2. So what's the kind of content? As you can see, okay, this first unit here, the language of contract law, really it's focused on understanding the formation of a contract. And of course, it's according to English law. There are some key concepts of what a contract is, offer and acceptance, consideration, and you read a contract law. When you actually look, if we go to page 37, okay, language of contract law, you see the kind of exercises are reading, a bit of writing, true-false questions, matching, and also there's usually quite often like some gap fill exercises here. You get these nice help desks. Okay, what do these words mean? And then at the end of the chapters, something that I really like is you get this vocabulary recap. Okay, so like key vocabulary, which is nice. They don't give definitions here, but that's quite good because when you're going through, you can write in your own definition here to help you learn. And as well, if you're considering to study for the TOLES exam, you have at the end of each unit the exam practice. So that's very nice. Obviously, this is the sort of foundation book, as you can see here. Then the B1, B2 book, okay, same publisher, it's Catherine Mason, it's 2021, and it follows the exact same structure. Okay, Unit 3 is the language of contract law. The contents inside might be slightly different, okay, and then understanding contracts, Unit 6. Then you've got Unit 10, understanding contracts. So you've got understanding contracts 1 and 2, just like in the foundation book. This content is a bit more advanced. For example, let's go to Unit 10. Unit 10 on page 223. So here, actually, you're dealing with some quite advanced stuff here. Risk and title. You've got reading activities, just like in the previous book. You've got some like answer the questions in full sentences. The thing that's different in this book is that you get a collocation bank. Collocations are common words that go together. For example, to carry a risk, to take out insurance. You also have preposition banks to pay for goods. So it's quite good for your grammar acquisition. You don't get at the end of the unit chapters, you do not get that vocabulary list that you got in the foundation book. You do still get some reviews. Okay, you get this using your knowledge, collocation review, vocabulary review, and a preposition review, which is really nice. Yeah, okay. And you get that higher exam practice. So you've got some exercises there. The thing that I really like about these books is that at the beginning, you've got a QR code to access the audios. So the TOLES exam doesn't actually have listening in it anymore. However, TOLES have decided to keep the listening activities in these books because they're useful for learners of legal English. So you can actually scan the QR codes and you access those audios, which is really nice. If you do have an older version, previously TOLES used to sell these as like single books rather than two separate books. If you do have an older version, the content is basically the same, okay? There's no major updates, so don't worry, don't panic if you've got an older book. One thing that I would say is just to make sure that you have the official book. And what do I mean by this? I mean that there has been some controversy in the past where I know that TOLES had an issue with somebody selling PDF copies of the book or like printing PDF copies of the book and selling them. And they took action against this person to stop them from infringing their copyright. So, of course, if you do buy a copy, you can buy a PDF copy directly from TOLES. I'll show you that in a minute. So either buy a second-hand real version of the book or an official copy from TOLES themselves. So let's have a look at this book, which is Advanced Legal English. Okay, this is another book from Catherine Mason, but this is for advanced students who want to take the TOLES Advanced. Even if you're not going to take this exam, it's still a useful book to use to acquire legal English vocabulary. Again, I'm going to use my phone to show you inside the book. Okay, so here we've got the cover, Advanced Legal English. I have got the second edition here. When we look at the contents page, okay, we can see that, wow, there's a lot of content in here. Okay, the book isn't that large, okay, but it's quite rich in its contents. It's got 60 units and each unit is 2 pages long. So each unit would take you about, it depends how fast you would go, but I would say probably, honestly, about an hour each one, maybe more. Probably if you're self-studying, it would be a bit less, but with a teacher explaining things to you, it would take a bit longer. As you can see, you've got lots of different units here, but the ones on contract go from chapter 27 through to chapter 35, and then also again unit 46 through to unit 50, and then again unit 53 through to unit 55, okay? And you can see even just here from the contents page that the contents is much more advanced than the previous 2 books. We've got specific concepts, okay, like times of the essence, terminating for cause. Within these units, you do learn quite a lot of advanced vocabulary. Let's take a look at a unit. We could have a look at unit 53, times of the essence. It's on page 112. So that you get an idea of what the book looks like. Okay, here, the layout is quite nice, okay? There's a lot of information on the pages, but colors are quite nice. They're like boxes, okay? And the types of exercises, again, there's usually a bit of reading. They even refer to like real cases, which can be interesting. And then you get exercises, choose the correct word for these and things like that, like fill in the gap. Okay, this means this. And you do have even a couple of discussion points that you can use to practice your speaking. So that's the advanced legal English in reference to contract drafting. Again, as far as I'm aware, there's no major differences between this edition and older editions. Okay, the next book is another book from Catherine Mason, okay, and it's this book, okay, The Vocabulary of Commercial Contracts. So this book is, again, it's a book that supports students who are taking the TOLES exam. However, it's also really useful for you if you just want to acquire vocabulary related to contracts. So I'll take you for a little look inside the book. Okay, here we have the vocabulary of commercial contracts. And you can see inside that there's no like contents or anything, because the book actually is a bit like a dictionary. Okay, it goes from A to, don't know if there's a Z, because I don't know of any contract terms with a Z, but apparently yes. Goes to Y. So A to Y. And so the way that it's structured is you've got words, okay, like you get 2 pages of words with their definitions, and then you've got like practice sentences where you have to fill in the gaps. The definitions are quite nice, and you can use this book even as a little contract dictionary if you want. The language is quite advanced, okay? You do get words that you would need for the TOLES Foundation or Higher, like arrears, okay? But you also get some pretty advanced vocabulary as you're going through the book. And I'd say the exercises are quite challenging. So you would use this book if you have, in my opinion, if you've already studied a little bit of contract law vocabulary and contract vocabulary, because if this is the book that you're starting with, it might be a bit of a challenge for you. So I wanted to show you like where you can buy these books. The TOLES books are primarily nowadays sold on toleslegal.com. Okay, you just go to their exam store. I'll put the links in the description. The thing that I really like about the way that TOLES is selling their books now is that you can buy the book or you can buy a PDF download. Next book. It's my book. Not just my book, mine and Natasha's book, Natasha Costello and me, Louise Kulbicki. It's called Practical English Language Skills for Lawyers. This book is really to develop your practical skills, okay? So the focus isn't exactly on vocabulary acquisition, although you will learn vocabulary in using this book, but it's also about like putting your skills into practice. So it's a bit different from the TOLES books. I would say it's complementary in the sense that you can use the TOLES books for vocabulary acquisition and then this book more for like practicing your skills. So let me show you inside it. Okay, so here we've got Practical English Language Skills for Lawyers, Improving Your Legal English. It's by Natasha Costello and me, Louise Kulbicki. Okay, so if we go inside, okay, we can see that we've got different chapters, okay, networking, telephoning and conference calls, legal writing, presentations, social media, and so on. The chapter that we're looking at is contract drafting and review, okay? So you can see from the contents page, okay, the type of things that you learn about, common types of commercial contracts, the structure of a contract, contract language, okay? Learning about absolute and qualified obligations, and explaining contract clauses to a client. Let's take a look inside the chapter 129. Let's have a look here. Okay, so you can see that the exercises are quite different from in the TOLES books. Okay, for example, there are like quite a lot of discussion questions. Okay, discussion questions here. We do have little vocabulary notes for language acquisition. We do have reading and like gap fill exercises. There are also listening exercises. I will talk about this in a minute. And we also have exercises which are in relation to an example contract. So at the back, at the end of this chapter, okay, we actually have an example contract that you can look at and refer to in relation to the exercises to, of course, gain vocabulary, but also to see a real contract in practice. Coming back to the listening exercises, unfortunately, our book doesn't have a nice QR code like the TOLES books, but here at the front, it does say access the support materials. It's quite difficult to find this link. I will put this link in the description. And this is where you find the listening materials. So you can buy our book on the Routledge website. That's the publisher's website. And you can, as I mentioned, the support material is there on that page. You can get the audio tracks, and then there's some like teacher notes. You can also buy it on Amazon. Okay, the next book is like a special mention, okay? This is actually a book for Italian lawyers. It's called Guida alla trattazione e redazione di contratti internazionali by Domenico Fargnoli. So, of course, this book, if you don't speak Italian, then this book isn't going to be useful for you. But if you're an Italian lawyer, it will be useful for you, okay? As I live in Italy and I deal with Italian lawyers, it's actually quite a nice book for me to have as a legal English teacher, but also I always recommend it to my students as well. Okay, let's look inside this book. Guida alla trattazione e redazione di contratti internazionali. Okay, Domenico Fargnoli. So obviously this book is for Italian lawyers or Italian legal professionals who work with international commercial contracts in English. It's written in Italian and in English. Okay, you can see that it's got different chapters like the pre-contractual phase, the contractual phase, and so on, boilerplate clauses. And what happens here, let's have a look at the boilerplate clauses 107. As you can see, you usually get information in Italian, but then you get example clauses in English and in Italian. So it's actually very nice to compare the language. So in this sense, it's actually a nice book for translators as well. The book doesn't have any like specific exercises to do, so it's more of a reference book, okay? And where can you buy this book? It's available from various like sellers in Italy, and you can also buy it on Amazon. Okay, so those are my top books for acquiring legal English vocabulary and putting it into practice for contract drafting. My next video on this topic is going to be about books for drafting contracts, which are aimed specifically at legal English learners. So tune in for that next time. If you've got any books that you recommend, leave them in the comments. And if you liked this video, do put a thumbs up. It does help me. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.